Hey y'all, welcome to Peyton Energetics. I'm Peyton, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Pleiadians. Now, in a couple of past videos, we've talked a bit about Pleiadian starseeds, some of their traits, their characteristics, but that's not what we're going to be doing today. Today, we're going to take a look at the Pleiadians themselves, the actual star race. We're going to take a look at who they are, what their civilization is like, what their role has been in galactic history, and why they're so involved with us here on Earth. Now, as you may know, or maybe you don't, as we entered 2023, we have officially entered the window for open contact, which means very soon we are going to be meeting our star family in person. And so with this exciting event getting nearer and nearer every day, I thought it was a good idea for us to start talking a little bit about the actual star races that we're going to be interacting with. So we're going to start with the Pleiadians, who are the star race that is most closely connected with us here on Earth, and actually one of the top contenders to be the first race to make open contact with us. Now, as you know, I channel the Pleiadians, so I work pretty closely with them. And in particular, I work with Pleiadians from Alcyone, Taygeta, and Electra. And today, the Pleiadians are going to let us in on their world. So let's start off by talking about where the Pleiadians are from. And this is something that most of you are probably familiar with. When we talk about the Pleiadians, we're talking about a star race that comes from the Pleiades star cluster. Now, this is a star cluster that is visible from Earth during certain times of our year, and it often looks to us like a cluster of between 7 and 9 stars. But the Pleiadians have said that there are actually more than 3,000 stars in their star system. So even though the Pleiades looks like a tiny little cluster to our naked human eyes, we're actually talking about a massive star system. And the Pleiadians have said that they have tens of thousands of races living in their star system. So whenever we talk about the Pleiadians, we tend to go very general, right? Our human minds want to think that all the Pleiadians are one thing, but they always like to gently remind us that they are a very vast civilization. They exist at multiple dimensional levels. So unlike us here on Earth, who are all pretty much in the same narrow range of dimension between third and fifth, the Pleiadians actually cover a very wide dimensional scale. And although the Pleiadians are most known for their humanoids, and especially for humanoids that look very much like we do, there are actually a huge range of species in the Pleiades. They have humanoids, they have reptilians, they have insectoids, they have feline beings, they have aquatic beings. So when we say the Pleiadians, a lot of times what we're doing is talking about those members of the Pleiadian races that are most relevant to us here on Earth. So oftentimes we are talking about, of course, the humanoids, and then also we're often talking a lot about the fifth density Pleiadians, because they have been very, very active with us recently, and again, maybe the first ones to actually make contact with us. Now, when the Pleiadians describe their star system, they say that there are a number of planets in their system that are very similar to Earth. And there are 3 star systems in particular in the Pleiadian system that we are most familiar with here on Earth. We tend to work a lot with Pleiadians from Alcyone, Electra, and Taygeta. So these are 3 of the star systems that are more relevant to us here on Earth. So when we think about the Pleiadians, we are not talking about a single type of being, but we do tend to focus on those that are working most closely with us here on Earth. Now, the Pleiadians are one of our younger star family members. So compared to the Arcturians, the Sirians, the Orions, the Pleiadians are much younger. And they're one of the races that has been most actively involved with us throughout our history. Like most of the star races that we're familiar with, the Pleiadians descended from the Lyran star system, which of course we know from our galactic history is the home of human consciousness in our galaxy. So the Pleiadians are one of the many star races that descend from Lyra. And what the Pleiadians are known for in the galactic community is, first of all, being explorers. They are known for being very active in the galactic community. They are not wallflowers. So they are one of the races that is often referred to as the emissaries of the galaxy. So you can think of the Pleiadians as being networkers. They are one of the races that facilitates communications between civilizations, helps to work with newer civilizations like us here on Earth, welcoming us, bringing us through the ascension process, being guides and mentors. So they're known for being explorers, for being ambassadors, emissaries. So this is a race that is very active. They are known to be expert time jumpers and very skilled with technology and with things like time travel. Now, something that the Pleiadians are also known for is being very loving and heart-centered. So they are, by their own description, one of the most emotional of the star races. So unlike some of the races like the Andromedans, the Arcturians, that are much more logical in terms of their personality, the Pleiadians themselves tend to describe themselves as being a highly emotional species. So this is one reason that when we think of the Pleiadians, we think of very loving beings. If you have ever worked with Pleiadian beings, you know that they are very, very loving, very heart-centered, and just want everyone to get along. They are true peacekeepers. Something else that's good to know about the Pleiadians is that they are said to be the star race that looks most like us here on Earth. So they look more like physical Earth humans than any of our other star ancestors. So the guides have said that the Pleiadians are our closest genetic galactic ancestors. So because of this, many of them, especially when we are talking about the fifth density Pleiadians, look very much like Earth humans. The guides have said that many Pleiadians could walk down our streets and we wouldn't know they were not one of us. So that is how similar to us they are said to look. And that's one of the reasons that the guides say they are at the top of the list of races to make first open contact with us. Because one of the goals of open contact, of course, is to ease the new civilization in without shocking it too much. And one of the ways that you can go about that is by introducing a civilization like Earth to its star ancestors that are most familiar to it. So the Pleiadians are at the top of that list in terms of looking most like us. Although they like to point out they do not consider themselves to be humans in the same way that we define ourselves as humans, because they have, according to their description, a different number of chromosomes than we have, and they have all 12 of their strands of DNA activated. So while they might look a lot like us, they are not actually exactly like us. Now, when we think about the Pleiadians, a lot of people, the first thing that comes to mind is the image of them as being all tall, blonde Nordics. And while this is a stereotype for a reason, this is a very prominent form of the Pleiadians who are very active with us here on Earth. Not all Pleiadians look Nordic in appearance. So many of the Pleiadians that once lived on Earth, once colonized Earth, were very closely connected with our indigenous populations. So they do not all look like Nordics, although that's a common Earth misconception, but they actually are very diverse in appearance. But they do tend to look very similar to Earth humans. Now, the physical Pleiadians are said to have a lifespan of 900 to 1,000 years. So you can see the difference between us here on Earth. And they're also able to stop their bodies from aging. So the guides say that if you were to look at a physical Pleiadian being, that being would look to be about 20 years of age, but the being could actually be several hundred years old. So the Pleiadians have mastered being able to stop the aging process, to stay in a form of their physical body that is at its physical prime. So you could see a Pleiadian being that looked to be 20 years old, 25 years old, that could actually be 500 or 600 years old. So that's kind of a fascinating thing about the Pleiadians, and something I'm sure we would like to get that technology here on Earth. Now, if you have ever had the chance to connect with Pleiadian energy, the energy of the Pleiadians tends to feel to many people very buzzy. very electrical. So it is an energy that's very just energizing and uplifting. And if you are starting to connect with your star family, with the galactic races, you may see Pleiadian energy as green. That's very common for people to pick up the Pleiadians as green energy, but also as purple. So purple is a color that comes through very often with them, as well as the color turquoise. So those are some things you can look to if you think you might be connecting with Pleiadian beings. Now, if you are interested in learning how to connect with your galactic family and open up your multidimensional abilities, I encourage you to check out my new Starseed Mastery class. I just announced it on my website, and it takes starseeds through all of the basic steps of learning how to open your multidimensional abilities, because we are all in the Starseed community so excited to start connecting with our star family, start making this contact that is now available to us. So if that is of interest to you, check out my new class. You can find it on my website at PeytonEnergetics.com, and you'll see all the details there if it's something that resonates with you. So now let's talk a little bit about the role the Pleiadians have played with us here on Earth. Now, the Pleiadians are one of our star family members who has had a very long history here on Earth. They have been here since the beginning, and they're actually one of our more hands-on members of our galactic family. We do, of course, have many family members who just take a little more distant approach with us, but not so with the Pleiadians. They have had their hands in the cookie jar, and at times they have, by their own admission, overstepped with us, gone from being mentors and guides to maybe bossing us around a little bit in the early days. So the Pleiadians have been very tied to humanity throughout its history, and they want nothing more than to help us through the ascension process and help us rejoin our galactic family. Now, just to give you a smidge of galactic history, in case you're not familiar with the role the Pleiadians have played, of course, as we mentioned earlier, they are descendants of the original Lyrans, which most of our star races are. Most of the ones that we're familiar with trace their origin to the Lyran star system. So the Pleiadians are no different. So when the Lyrans fled the reptilian invasion that destroyed their star system, they spread throughout the galaxy, and some of them came and colonized Earth, and then later ended up migrating off of Earth to the Pleiades. So we see that the Pleiadians have been very connected to our planet, and the Pleiadians, especially the fifth density Pleiadians, are one of the groups that are most actively protecting Earth right now. So as y'all have probably heard, there is kind of a no-fly zone around Earth right now, and the benevolent races are very actively protecting Earth from some of the more negatively oriented races that want to interfere with our ascension process. So we have several races of our star family members who are very actively patrolling the area around Earth and keeping the negatives away from us. And the fifth density Pleiadians are one of our most aggressive defenders right now. So as they like to say, they are in our orbit now. The fifth density Pleiadians in particular have been with us very closely since about 2008, although they have been on the planet in the 40s and 50s as well, actually physically entered the planet, they say. And since 2008, they have been very actively patrolling our airspace. So they say that between 2008 and 2017, they were actually in charge of running the matrix computers run by the moon. Now, control of that has now transferred to the Arcturians, according to most stories. But again, you see the close involvement that many of the fifth density Pleiadians have had with Earth. So not only have they lived here, have they colonized Earth, they are our most active, or one of our most active defenders right now, protecting us from the troublemakers who would like to take advantage of this very sensitive time in our ascension process. But actually, we're running the matrix computers, according to the guides. So very, very close relationship with us, and just very staunch defenders of Earth. Have really taken roles as our protectors. Now, one thing that I thought it would be good for the guides to share is a little sneak peek at what their civilization actually looks like. What is it like to actually live in the Pleiades? So according to the guides, they have a civilization that is very similar to most of the advanced civilizations in our galaxy. So they describe that as having what they call a holographic political system or governing system, which is very different from anything that we are used to on Earth right now. Now, this holographic political system is something they learned from the Andromedans, who are generally credited as being the inventors of this system, and it is really used by most of the advanced races in the galaxy. So how this system works is that they are essentially governed or organized by a system of councils. And they're kind of layers on layers of non-binding councils. So this is how things are accomplished, rather than our rigid, secretive governments that we have here on Earth. They have completely open political systems. So they have layers of non-binding councils. So the way things are accomplished, the way disputes are resolved, it's all through council. So you start by taking your dispute to the lowest level of council, maybe your neighborhood council, and the council will make a decision that best serves the whole. And if the dispute can't be resolved at that level, it moves up to the next level until it gets to higher and higher levels of organizing body. And the solution to disputes is always a common sense-based solution and what serves the whole. So the guides say that their organizing system, the word government doesn't seem to do it justice, but their organizing system, their political system is very much based on what serves the whole, what is best for the whole, and what makes common sense. And wouldn't that be a breath of fresh air here on Earth? So this is kind of the general way that they're organized. And as they like to say, everything is provided freely to every individual. So there is no work, there is no monetary system, there is no crime, there is no politics, because everything is run by these informal committees or councils. The Pleiadians love their councils. So this is how their society is structured. And the guides say it is essentially a total freedom-based system where everyone is free to do whatever they want as long as they don't interfere with someone else or with the planet. So it is a very common sense-based system. Everyone is provided everything that they need or desire. So there's no crime because you have everything you want. So it's really kind of a very fascinating system when you hear it described, and it sounds absolutely amazing. And finally, the last thing that's kind of relevant for us to know about the Pleiadians is we are most familiar or working most closely with 3 of the Pleiadian star systems in particular, because as we mentioned, there are about 7 stars that we are pretty familiar with here on Earth. Of course, there are thousands more, they tell us, but the Pleiadian star systems that are most relevant and active with us here on Earth are, first off, Alcyone. Now, Alcyone is the central sun of the Pleiades, and we are all familiar with that. That's where many of the beautiful channeled beings we're aware of come from. So Alcyone is known as the Pleiadian center of government or civilization. That's where many of their higher councils are located. And it's also the center of their culture and also their administration. So this is kind of what you can think of as, loosely speaking, their capital. Now, we are also very familiar, of course, with Taygeta. And Taygetans, of course, give us some of the 5th density Pleiadians that we're most familiar with, who are taking a very, very active role as protectors of Earth right now, had been very instrumental, they tell us, in controlling the Matrix computers for not quite 10 years, but around that. And the Taygetans are very known for, first of all, being the Nordics that we are so familiar with, but also with being master explorers and really expert time travelers. So very, very expert, very technologically accomplished, and working very, very closely with Earth right now. And finally, the 3rd star system that works very closely with us is one you may not have heard of, and that is Electra. And Electra in the Pleiades is really known as being the technology center. So that's where you have many of the great Pleiadian inventions, inventors, and so that is a star system that, while perhaps not as actively involved with us as the Pleiadians, is one of the three that is very closely working with Earth right now. So the guides have said that many of the Pleiadian starseeds that we have been talking about in some of these videos, most of them come from these three star systems. So these are the three star systems that I channel. So the beings that I work with come from these three systems. My guides in particular are very heavily slanted toward Alcyone, just to give you a little bit of flavor, a little deeper understanding of where the information comes from that they share with you. So I hope that helps you get to know the Pleiadians a little better. Again, very relevant because they may very well be the first members of our star family to make contact with us. So it is always very exciting to start to get to know some of our star family members a little better. So let me know in the comments below, what other star races would you like to know about? We are going to cover some of the most common star races, those that work most closely with us here on Earth. But let me know in the comments if you have a particular request. And while you're down there, don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. I'll see you soon. Bye.